Welcome back to What You Will Learn. My name is Adam Ashton.
My name is Adam Jones. Today we are reviewing Rich Dad, Poor Dad, an absolute classic, awesome book.
Our man Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah.
Subtitled, What the Rich Teach Their Kids About Money That the Poor and Middle Class Do Not. Number one best-selling personal finance book of all time. It's it's a top tenner.
Yeah,
all time.
Definitely one of the all-time classics in terms of personal finances and getting into entrepreneurship and
give you a little bit of taste of
So the basic crux of the story is he's got two dads, obviously, as the book suggests, like one poor dad and one rich dad, and he got different lessons taught by both dads growing up, and this is all about what the rich dad taught him and what he subsequently tries to teach to the readers.
Yeah, so he says one dad was highly educated, intelligent, got a PhD on full scholarship. The other dad dropped out of school in year 8.
Yeah.
One dad left tens of millions of dollars when he died. The other dad left bills to pay. One dad says, I can't afford it. One dad says, how can I afford it? One dad was relying on the government for the job. One guy created his own job. And so he sort of said, I decided to listen to my rich dad and I ignored my poor dad, even though the poor dad was the one with all the college degrees and fancy jobs.
Yeah. So just quickly, the poor dad is his biological dad, so to speak, mate. We were just saying before, the whole story is probably
made up.
made up to prove the point, but which is fine because it's a good book. But the poor dad's his biological dad, and then his rich dad is his mate's Mike.
Yeah.
His mate's Mike's dad, who is running a lot of different businesses in construction and restaurants and things like that.
And they said they both, were making a lot of money, but one seemed to never have money, whereas one was growing his money over time. And so these are sort of the lessons from the
one good juxtaposition between the two is the poor dad said the love of money is the root of all evil, and then the rich dad said the lack of money is the root of all evil.
Yes,
so it's completely two different attitudes.
And even they say the difference between working for money versus having money work for you. And some of those things. Yeah.
So, mate, there's a few awesome paradigm kind of shifting stuff in the book, which we'll get into, but there's, 6 lessons?
I think so. I'm trying to work it out before. I think there's 6 plus a few bonuses.
Yeah. So, the biggest for me definitely was lesson number 1, which is the rich don't work for money.
The poor and the middle class work for money, but the rich have money work for them.
Yeah. So, it starts out the story of Robert and Mike, I think his name was playing around, and then when they're like 7 or 8 years old or whatever, and they ask Robert Kiyosaki's dad, I want to be rich. How do I get rich? And his dad goes, listen, son, you got to learn to make money.
Yeah.
He goes, how do I make money? And he goes, use your head.
Yeah. He had no idea, basically, yeah?
Yeah, he had no idea. So at 8 years old, what they went and did, they went and got like a whole bunch of toothpaste bottles or something, and then heated them up or whatever, but the end thing they were trying to make were nickels.
Yeah.
So they actually physically tried to make money.
Man, that might be another fake story, but who knows? It's funny. So they tried to melt down all this metal and form it into a coin to try and make money, but that wasn't quite the way to go about it. So instead they said, well, why don't you go and ask Mike's dad? He
knows his shit.
Yeah, he knows his shit. He's going to be rich one day or something like that, yeah.
So they go over to Mike's dad and then ask, we want to become rich, and then I don't know word for it, but and then Mike's dad just said, yep, you can work for me on Saturdays, work for 10 cents an hour, work for 3 hours a week, which is like obviously not much money, but I'll teach you how to be rich.
Yeah. So then they go to the shop, they work for 3 hours, the old lady running the shop gave them their 10 cents an hour each. Couple of weeks, they hadn't learned anything from the dad, so they said, well, we went and had another meeting with the rich dad and said, this is ridiculous, we're working for 10 cents an hour, you should give us a pay rise to whatever it was, 20 cents an hour or something. And instead of getting that pay rise, the bloke said, getting this 10 cent an hour pay rise isn't going to solve your problem, so instead work for free. So they went in trying to get a pay rise, ended up getting working for free now.
Yeah. So he says, not bad. In less than a month, you sound like most of my employees. So he's got a good quote here. If you learn this lesson, you'll grow into a wise, happy, wealthy man. If you don't, you'll spend your life blaming a job or your boss for your problems. You'll live this life always hoping for that big break will solve your money problems.
Yeah.
So if you're always asking for that pay rise.
And blaming someone else. Stop blaming someone else.
Yeah.
He says change your point of view. Realize that you're the problem, not your boss, not the government, any of those things. It's up to you to go and learn something, change yourself, grow wiser.
Yeah. So money is an illusion, truly like the carrot for the donkey. Money is really made up. It is only the illusion of confidence and ignorance of the masses that this house of cards stands.
Yeah. Wow. That's yeah.
A funny thing they do is they're in the shop, and then he's got Miss Martin, who's an employee, and she's like a nice chick. She's 45 or 60 years old or something, and they're working 40 years for her. And he grabs the kids and goes, "Look at Miss Martin over there," and pointed at her, and Miss Martin's like cleaning the desk or something. But she's obviously not rich, and she's like living in her own bubble, I guess, of just ignorance and trapped in something she's not.
And so instead of then, because they were then working for free, they were forced to get something else out of the job. They weren't getting money out of it, so they had to lift their eyes a bit and look around for opportunities. And they saw that the old magazines that they didn't sell, they chopped off the back cover and threw them out, or something along those lines. And so they said, "Oh, why are you throwing these out? Can we have them?" And they said, "Yes, but you're not allowed to sell them. It's illegal to resell these because they're the old edition. You can't sell them or whatever." So instead they got all the old comic books and in their room made like a comic book library, and some kids came and paid 5 cents to visit the library for an hour and read all the comic books. So they didn't sell them, but I think they then hired the sister and gave her like 2 cents or something to look after the library.
So that's the whole shift in. So the one way you can look at it is looking for a pay rise your whole life, or the other two is literally using your brain to think of ways of making money. So at that early age, they were pushed down the direction of looking for ways to make money, as opposed to asking for the pay rise.
Nice. And the last thing I've got for this section before we move on to lesson 2, he said that Rich Dad told him people's lives are forever controlled by 2 emotions, fear and greed. And first, the fear of not having any money motivates us to work hard and try and make more money. But once we get that paycheck, our greed, our desires sort of take over, and we think of all these wonderful things we can buy with the money. So then we spend all our money, and then we're in fear again because we don't have enough money, so we try and work hard, get a promotion to get more money, but then our greed takes over, we buy more shit.
Yeah, and just with that greed, a lot of people say, look, I'm not interested in money, and people who are after money are greedy, but at the same time they're working 8 hours a day. So it's a denial of truth. If they weren't interested in money really, then why the hell are they working 8 hours a day all their life, 50 hours, 50 weeks of the year?
Yeah, so true.
Yeah, cool. So lesson 1 was bloody cool. That was probably where the most paradigm shifts are, I guess. But lesson 2, why teach financial literacy?
And he says it's not about how much money you make, it's how much money you keep.
So a lot of people, if they get a pay rise, their necessary expenses usually creep up to meet it. So if you're on, say, $60,000 a year and you're always looking for $70,000 and you get excited and you think you'll be happier, but you're not. You're just going to get to that 70 and then your expenses are going to meet where you are.
I think that was in the book The Richest Man in Babylon that we did as well, that every time you think more money is going to solve your problems, but then when you get more money, you just spend more.
Yeah. So what does he say? He says in the book, always pay yourself first.
Yep.
A certain percentage, and then your assets can start increasing. And this chapter goes into what assets and liabilities really are.
Yeah. So this is a big shift, I guess, from the typical accounting definition of assets and liabilities. He says that the poor and middle class buy liabilities that they think are assets, whereas the rich people buy actual assets. So here's we'll forget about whatever the accounting definition is, but the rich dad poor dad definition is assets are something you own that puts money into your pocket regularly, whereas a liability takes money out of your pocket regularly. So I guess the example is buying a house. Some people think buying a house, I've got an asset. But that house means that every month you have to pay mortgage, you have to tidy it up, you have to pay to have any issues fixed and whatever. So that's actually taking money out of your pocket. So he says that house is a liability until you get someone in to rent that house, and those renters pay you money every month. Yep. So now you've turned that into an asset.
Totally. So the poor person has income coming into their pockets, and then it goes to expenses, then nothing.
Yeah.
The middle class goes from the income to liability. So like the mortgage you were saying, car loans, credit card, school loans. to expenses.
Yep.
With the rich, the money goes from assets to income, and then finally to expenses.
Yep. So so as you say, so the poor start with their job, which is where they get their income, and straight to expenses. The middle class again have a job that goes. They buy things they think are assets, but they're actually liabilities. Whereas the rich, they don't start with the job; they start with the assets they own that regularly pays them that income.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's all about trying to use that income to buy more assets and grow that assets, which in turn grow the amount of income that gets thrown off the back of those assets.
Yeah, and Kiyosaki absolutely hates taxes. So it's all, a lot of this
does some dodgy shit to get out.
Totally. So a lot of part of this chapter is finding ways to minimise your taxes, and that's putting some of your money, your income through your assets, and then then writing it off as business expenses and things like that, so you can avoid getting taxed.
Yeah, so having that a proper sort of company or business structure means that you can normally from a job you get your job income gets taxed first, and you get what's left over. And then you spend the rest. Where he's saying from a business, you can spend first and then get taxed on what's left over.
Yep. And this is why the middle class struggle, because their expenses increase proportion to their salary.
Yep.
And so does their taxes.
Yep.
Whereas while the rich get richer, their assets grow, and subsequently the income that comes with it grows with it.
Yep. Nice. And the other thing they say about the middle class is when you're buying liabilities, it just means your expenses go up. And as I've probably experienced that if you get more and more in debt, it gets easier and easier to go further into debt. And so he says that rather than keep spending and keep buying crappy liabilities, he says an old friend once said, if you find that you've dug yourself into a hole, stop digging. So that's the most important thing to try and get out of that hole is stop digging first of all, and then you can make your way out.
Mate, your voice just broke a little bit. It's happened to me about 8 times on the potty. Getting a bit deeper.
That's good. Personal.
It's going to help the potty, I think. But yeah. Mate, lesson 3 is... you got any more on that one?
The only thing is he says that you can be highly educated, you can be professionally successful, but it doesn't mean you're going to be financially literate.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's a very true thing. Like a lot of people, we grow up thinking maybe they're going down the track of law or engineer or studying PhD or whatever. It's going to get you financially successful, but in reality, it's not.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's kind of putting those ideas into organised thought and then making money.
Yeah, love it.
So, mate, lesson 3 was mind your own business.
So he says here, the rich focus on their asset column while everyone else is focusing on their income. So as we said, that for the middle class and the poor, their income comes from their job, so they try to get a better job to grow their income, whereas the rich realise that their income comes from their assets, so they build those assets. And
he talks a lot about in minding your own business, you got to take control of your own financial life. Don't outsource it to someone else to manage your money. You got to take control of it yourself. And another thing is acquire assets that you love. If you don't love it, you won't take care of it. So for Robert, he loves real estate, so he's passionate about that. So he owns, I think, thousands and thousands of properties.
Millions.
Millions?
Mate, he owns so much property.
Does he?
He says that.
He says it.
He says...
what Robert says.
He says financial struggle is often the result of people working all their lives for someone else. So I guess some examples of assets... he doesn't give any specifics, go and buy this stock, but he just says work out what assets are and make sure you know the difference between assets and liabilities. So he says some could be, maybe stocks, bonds, real estate that generates money, businesses that don't require your presence, your time, royalties from intellectual property, so you write a book or make music or something like that. But yeah, there's some examples. Of
Good shit.
Getting into.
Lesson 4 is the history of taxes and the power of corporations.
Yeah, so I think he as we said, he hates taxes.
He hates taxes.
He hates the fucking government.
So corporations are the biggest secret of the rich, which I guess I touched on a bit earlier.
Yeah. He says, mate, I don't know if it's too much info, but basically, as we sort of said, that with having a corporation means you can pay all the expenses first and get taxed on the leftover rather than getting taxed on everything at the start and trying to spend what's left. Yep.
So financial IQ is made up of accounting, investing, understanding markets, and the law. So those 4 points.
Yeah. So
they're the things. What he's obviously really big on just financial IQ.
Mate, I've got a funny quote here. He says, that if you spend your time, building your education, climbing the corporate ladder, he says, by relying solely on a paycheck from a corporate employer instead of trying to build your own assets, I would be a docile cow ready for milking and then slaughter. And he says, instead of climbing the ladder, why not own the ladder?
Yeah. Fucking love it. It's a good book, man. Lesson 5 is the rich invent money. So they were kind of on the way at the start, Robert and Mike, when they tried to make nickels, I guess.
Yeah.
So
he says it's not the smart people that get ahead in the real world, it's the bold and adventurous.
Yeah. We all have tremendous potential and are blessed with gifts, yet the one thing that holds us back is some degree of self-doubt, he says. So bravado, cunningness, having balls, tenacity or whatever is going to decide one's future much more than school grades and your PhD and your titles do.
There's a subtle subliminal messaging in here. For 6 pages, he talks about this board game he made called Cash Flow.
Yeah.
I think he's just plugging it for 6 pages, how good it is. I haven't played it. Have you ever played it?
No, I haven't, actually.
I reckon it'd be worth playing.
Yeah. He says, this is pretty interesting. The more real you think money is, the harder you work for it. And if you can grasp the concept that money is actually not real, you will grow rich faster.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Mate, I like this little bit he's got here as well, which sounds harder to you. So some people might think it's so hard to come up with ideas, put the effort in, build a business. But he says, which sounds harder? Work hard, 8 hours a day, 50 weeks of the year for 50 years, pay 50% in taxes, save what's left, and then your savings earn 5% interest, which also gets taxed. Or take the time to develop your financial intelligence, harness the power of your brain, and build that asset column.
Mate, the second one
Good.
sounds a lot more fun.
I reckon.
Mate, it's as productive as banging your head against the wall.
Yeah.
In some ways, and thinking you're working hard.
Yeah. And mate, he says the good thing is simple math and common sense are all you need to do well financially.
So yeah, the most powerful asset we have is our mind. So if you train that well, it can create enormous amounts of wealth. Seemingly instantaneously, he said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff, man.
Mate, good stuff.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Lesson 6, work to learn, don't work for money.
Yeah. Learn first and then earn later.
So in the short term, this might mean you earn less, but in the long term, it's going to pay big dividends.
Yeah.
So whatever work you're doing, if you're working as an employee, do it purely for the skills you're going to obtain. Don't do it just for that paycheck.
Yeah, and I think this is super important, especially early on in your career. Don't pick the job that pays the highest money, because in the grand scheme of things, an extra $5,000 for a year is not a lot.
Yeah, he says on expenses anyway.
Yeah, exactly. He says instead pick jobs that don't necessarily pay you the most, but are going to give you the most opportunity to learn, grow, build yourself, learn new skills and important skills that will help you way further down the track for much bigger money.
And for Robert, he says the most important skills to learn are sales and marketing. So if you learn that early in your career, then you're onto a winner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Job is an acronym for just over broke.
He's got an acronym for PhD, doesn't it? What was that? Fucking poor, helpless, desperate. Or something like that.
I don't remember. That sounds good though.
Yeah, poor, hopeless and desperate.
Mate, there's another one. Mate, this is pretty true, I reckon.
Yeah.
Workers work just hard enough so that they don't get fired, and owners pay just enough so that the workers don't quit. Yeah. It's a fine balance, but I reckon that's spot on. You do just enough to scrape through, and they pay you just enough to keep you hanging around.
Yeah. Mate, phenomenal stuff. Then there's a little bit on chapter 7 I'd like to cover. So he says the primary difference between a rich person and a poor person is how they manage their fear. And failure inspires winners and failure defeats losers.
That's sick. He sort of says there's 5 roadblocks, I guess. Fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance. And they're the things you need to overcome in order to make money.
Mate, so yeah.
Sorry, mate, a few more.
Please.
Chapter 8, he just says getting started, there's gold everywhere. Most people just don't see it. And so he gives, I guess, a few steps as to how to get started.
So I guess, just on that, I guess if you've got the bit more of an entrepreneurial mind, then you will start seeing opportunities everywhere. If your mind's always thinking about new business ideas and ways to make money, then there's opportunities really everywhere.
Yeah, nice. I guess just a few of the to-dos before we maybe get into wrapping it up. He just says stop doing what you're doing and don't just work for money. Don't look for that next promotion. Look for new ideas. Find someone who has done what you want to do. and then, just continue to learn, read books, take classes, listen to podcasts, attend seminars, keep learning, keep growing.
So yeah, young people look down the road of what skills they want to acquire before choosing a specific profession and before getting trapped into the rat race.
Yeah, nice. I think that's everything from me.
Mate, there's a bit more on the rat race.
Yeah, good. Yeah, lay into it.
So he says, a young couple will buy a mortgage, use a credit card to pay for the furniture, then it maxes out. Then they might get a bit older, they might get married or whatever. Then a baby comes on its way, and that's when you're in the rat race.
Yeah, you're cooked.
You're trapped. You can't get out, and you're done.
Yeah.
So yeah. So he says, this is a bit early, but people's lives are forever controlled by two emotions, fear and greed. So offer money and they will continue expending. So keeping...
Yeah,
rat race. Yeah. Kind of butchered that,
mate. Oh, far out. Mate, this is a top 10er for me. Like, I reckon this will always be in the top 10. It's maybe not... I reckon there's a bit of salt and pepper is added to some of these stories that he might have made up.
Yeah.
But there's some really serious stuff in there. And like the first time you read this will seriously like open your eyes to some real shit.
Yeah. Mate, I agree. Probably when I first read it, I thought it was the best book I've ever read.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And then now, the second time, there's, top 10 though. Definitely for sure, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, good stuff. Rich Dad Poor Dad, Rob Kiyosaki. We actually went and saw him in a live event, mate. He's an old crazy man, isn't he?
He must be like he's about 70 now. He's got no filter.
Yeah.
And he just
everything was just you're fucked.
If you work in a job, you're fucked.
So pretty much everyone's he put down every example you could possibly doing in life and just said you're fucked. But yeah, he says,
if you're buying Australian real estate, you're fucked.
But he's a big believer there's actually a big crash coming, and what we're recording now in 2017. So if you're listening in a few years, we'll see if time will tell if Robert Kiyosaki's dire predictions about the world economy will actually come through.
I reckon 12 months ago he made the same predictions.
He did. I remember early last year he was saying his Rich Dad prophecy or whatever was 1990. From 1992 he was saying there was a crash coming in 2016. Do you remember
really?
That? He said that's what he was saying last year. He's had this.
He made
prophecy.
like these three predictions, like 2008, and then
just ages, and 2016, and it hasn't come through. And now he's gone to be quiet. But
no, he'll be coming back,
mate. Good stuff. All right, so singing,
sing it,
singing, winging.
Ooh. Yeah. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki.
Listen, boys. You know what? Your first lesson is the rich, they do not work for money.
Don't be a poor cunt, be a rich cunt. They have much more money and much more fun and much more money.
Look at Miss Martin over there, cleaning the table, wiping the desk, cleaning the floors. You know what? She's an ignorant cunt trapped in her own reality and never going to realize she's trapped.
Take your job into an income straight to expenses. If you're middle class, you take your job into income, into liabilities, then expenses. But if you're rich, assets equals income equal assets, then more income and more assets.
Listen,
more
boys. Listen, boys, there's another lesson I want to teach you. That is that the rich, they invent their money.
Like melting down toothpaste into nickels?
That's right. They invent money, they make it, they create it, and then they fucking buy what they fucking want, motherfuckers. You little cunts. You little two boys, you think you know shit?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki.
Robert Kiyosaki doing his thing on a Friday night. Robert Kiyosaki, really rich.
You're fucked.
Millions of properties. It's Robert Kiyosaki. The whole world is going to have an economic crash. Oh, what a prophecy! Crash. It's all gonna crash and all come burning down. Your house will come burning down, motherfucker, in the banking system.